welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you on a cold January day. It's the beginning of January and it is absolutely freezing here. And so I thought it would be the perfect day to make my creamy mushroom soup that my family absolutely loves. And anybody else that's tried it really loves it as well. It's so cozy. The way I make it, it's a little bit lighter, so it's not super heavy when you're having it. This is a recipe where you can really make it your own. I'm using 4 different types of mushrooms here. I have Velvety mushrooms, and I have cremini mushrooms, some oyster mushrooms, and some shiitake mushrooms. And I'm using fresh thyme as my aromatic, but really you can play around with all this. You can use, if you can't find these mushrooms in your grocery store, you can easily just use either just white mushrooms or cremini mushrooms, which are usually the brown mushrooms. Those are the most common mushrooms you'll find in the grocery store. So if that's all you can find, feel free to use those. The flavor profile will change a little bit depending on which mushrooms you introduce into the recipe, but at least you have the base of how to make this amazing recipe. But before I start making the soup, I wanted to show you guys something that I've introduced into my regimen the last little bit. It's called Magic Mind, and it's a special mental performance shot. It really helps with having sustained energy throughout the day and helping you concentrate and getting those tasks done that you might be maybe procrastinating and avoiding doing, like I tend to do sometimes. And so this has really helped me with that. It's just a simple shot that I can take in the morning, and then it gives me energy and a calm mind throughout the day. It's got different ingredients. It's got over, I think, 12 ingredients in here that give you different benefits. And there's actually a few mushrooms in here, speaking of mushroom soup. They have lion's mane for mental performance, and then also cordyceps, which is another mushroom for calm energy, and a lot of other things like turmeric, which helps with inflammation, which also makes you feel better. I look forward to having this every day. It takes a few days for the effects to kick in, but now I crave it. I want to have it in the morning. It's nice and refreshing. I store it in the fridge and I have it when it's chilled. It's slightly sweet. This is just something simple I can add that will help me be calm, get more work done in a more efficient manner without being distracted and all over the place. I'm so happy to be working with Magic Mind on this video today. They've given me a special code that gives you 48% off on your first subscription in the next 10 days. And the code is Jessica20. I'll include that in the link below. And one thing that I love about this is that it's 100% risk-free. You can try it for up to 100 days. And if you're not happy for some reason, you get a full refund. There's really no downside to trying it. Just get all the benefits of enhanced mental performance. So step 1 would be to prep all your ingredients. I have these here. I didn't find them pre-sliced, but if you have that, you found that at your grocery store, please go ahead and do that. That saves you a step. I will thinly slice all of these mushrooms, and I will thinly slice the onion as well. I have a red onion here, but you can easily use a Vidalia onion to do that. And yeah, so I will start by chopping my onion and my garlic, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Because I won't be blending the soup out, I love to cut my mushrooms really thin, and that way they really melt nicely into your mouth when you're eating them at the end. It's really a personal preference. If you want to cut them a little chunkier or thinner, I just really like the thin little slices. And if you see that your mushrooms have maybe a little bit of dirt, you can just brush it off. Sometimes I do run them under water just super quickly just to rinse everything off, but they do say to avoid putting water on these because they are like little sponges and they absorb everything. For this time, I'm gonna avoid putting them under the water. I'm just gonna quickly just like get rid of any like little things that look like dirt on the mushrooms. I have my onions that are sliced up. I've chopped up my garlic really finely too. And I have my mountain of sliced up mushrooms here. I'm gonna be adding this all to a large stock pot, or like a large soup pot. And step 1 is to add the butter. I have about 3 tablespoons here. You can add 2 to 3 tablespoons into your stock pot, and then add the onions on a medium heat, just until the onions start to soften and start to caramelize a little bit. And at that point, we're gonna add our mushrooms in as well. It's been about 5 minutes that the onions have been cooking. You see how they've really softened up and they're starting to caramelize. So at this point, I will start adding the mushrooms. Now that I've added the mushrooms, I'm gonna let that cook down for about 10 minutes. I'm gonna stir it on occasion just a little bit, just to make sure everything's getting cooked evenly. Don't be alarmed by the amount of mushrooms that's in this recipe. Mushrooms have a lot of water content, and so they really cook down to half, even less than that. So you'll see at the end, we're not gonna be left with that large amount of mushrooms as you're cooking them down. I wanted to show you what I mean by how much the mushrooms cook down. This has only been 3-4 minutes that the mushrooms have been cooking, and look how much they're just essentially just like one layer at the bottom of the pot. They've reduced so much. I'm going to continue cooking these so they can soften up a little bit more, and I'm also going to add the 1 clove of garlic that I've chopped up. I'm going to add it at this point too, so I can cook with the mushrooms as well. One thing I wanted to mention is that I'm using fresh thyme for today's recipe. I've just gathered maybe 8 or 10 twigs, and I've tied them up with some kitchen twine. If you're gonna be using dry thyme, you can also add it now at the same time as the garlic. Another thing is where you take off the little leaves off each stem of the thyme and include that. I just chosen to tie it up together. I'll plop it in for some flavor, and then at the end I can just remove it. So it's really up to you if you want to use fresh and just put them whole inside, use just the leaves, or just use dried thyme as well. This is what the mushrooms look like after 10 minutes. Most of the water has evaporated. It's actually starting to stick a little bit at the bottom, so I'm just gonna lower the heat a little bit. And I'm gonna add the flour. At this point, I'm gonna sprinkle in 2 tablespoons and mix that in. Give the chance to the flour to saute a little bit and get a nice color. Make sure that's nicely incorporated. The flour is what's gonna help the soup thicken up. You could add, if you wanted a thicker soup, you could add an extra 2 tablespoons of flour or even more. I'm trying to keep it light, and so I'm only adding a couple of tablespoons. So that's sauteed. I'm also adding a couple of teaspoons of garlic powder. I love using the 2 different types of garlic. It adds just a different dimension to the flavor profile of the soup. So I like to use a little bit of a fresh garlic and then a dried garlic as well. So just adding that in, and then I'll be adding in the 5 cups of stock. That could be vegetable stock if you're wanting to keep this vegetarian, or like I'm doing, you can add some bone broth just to amp up the protein factor of it and just the general benefits of the soup as well. If the flour has started sticking to the bottom, don't worry, with the liquid it'll start to lift off as you're cooking it. At this point, I'm also adding the thyme and 1 bay leaf. I'm going to stir that in, and as well as salt and pepper to taste. I'm going to bring the broth now to a boil, and once it starts to boil, I'm going to reduce the heat to a medium-low heat. Just let it simmer for about half an hour, 45 minutes, until the mushrooms are nice and soft and all the flavors are nicely blended. Towards the end, when the soup is essentially ready to go, I'm going to be adding half a cup of cream. I'm adding half and half, so that's a 10% fat content, but you could do a heavy cream, which is like a 35% to make it a little heartier. But because I'm trying to keep it lighter, I'm going to be using the half and half. Now that the soup has started to boil, I reduced it to a low setting, and I'm going to cover this for about 30 to 45 minutes and let this cook off. This has been cooking away for about 45 minutes. You could do an extra 10-15 minutes if you wanted the mushrooms to be even softer, but I feel like they've got a little bit of a bite to them, so I feel like this is good for us. I'm gonna add half a cup of cream and let that cook for another couple of minutes until the cream warms up and everything is nicely incorporated. This is the end result. Don't forget to remove the bay leaf before eating it, and if you use the fresh thyme, don't forget to remove the thyme sticks. So I'm just gonna fish those out and then I can plate it. There you go. That is the recipe for my creamy mushroom soup. I really hope you give it a try. It's the perfect soup for a cold winter day when you're looking for something warm and cozy. And I also wanted to remind you that if you would want to try Magic Mind, my link is down below in the description, Jessica20, and you get 48% off your first subscription for the next 10 days. And so I encourage you guys to give it a shot, no pun intended, and I'll see you guys next week.